They say the cruelest pain doesn't come from strangers, it comes from your own blood. I never thought I'd live long enough to hear my grandson call me a useless old man, or to see my granddaughter flinch when I tried to hug her, as if my hands carried shame instead of the calluses that fed them. The day they poured boiling water over me wasn't the worst part. The worst part was hearing them laugh while they did it. I can still smell the scalded skin. It wasn't much, just a splash from the kettle, an accident, they said, but the look in their eyes told me otherwise. "Careful, Grandpa," Jake smirked, his phone already recording. "Wouldn't want to make a scene for TikTok, right?" The camera light blinked red. Lila giggled behind him. My own grandchildren, turning my pain into content. People always ask me, "Tom, when did it all start?" As if betrayal had a date and time. But it's never one moment. It's a slow leak, like a pipe corroding quietly behind the wall until one morning the whole kitchen floods. My leak started 2 years ago when my son Mark convinced me to sell my old house and move in with him for my comfort. Comfort, that word should come with a warning label. I had worked 47 years as a mechanic. Every cent I earned went into that little brick house by the river. After my wife, Helen, died, that house was all I had left that still felt alive. The smell of her lilacs in the yard, the creak of the old porch steps, the dent in her favorite armchair. It was our history. But Mark said it wasn't safe for me anymore. "You're 73, Dad. Stairs, gas stove. No alarm system. It's time you stop pretending you're 20. He promised I'd have my own space in their new suburban mansion. Promised the kids would love having me around. "They need to know where they come from," he said. So I signed the sale papers. $580,000. More money than I'd ever seen at once. Mark's lawyer handled everything. Said the funds would be managed for me to make sure I'd be cared for. I didn't question it. When you love your son, you don't read the fine print. The first few months were good. Lila would sit beside me while I told her stories about how I met Helen. Jake would ask about my old motorcycle. They'd laugh at my jokes, roll their eyes when I called them kids. It almost felt like family. Then slowly, like rust spreading, things changed. My old habits, making breakfast early, listening to the radio, fixing things in the garage, became annoying. "Grandpa, could you not make noise before 10? I have online classes," Jake would shout through his closed door. Lila started locking the fridge, claiming her protein shakes were special diet stuff. Even Mark and his wife Diane stopped inviting me to the dinner table when guests came. "You can eat in the den, Dad," Diane would whisper. "It's just, you talk a lot about the past, and people don't get it." Then came the day I asked about my money. I hadn't seen a single bank statement since selling my house. Mark smiled like a man explaining math to a child. "Dad, we're handling it for you. You've got room, food, internet. What more do you need? Enjoy retirement." That was the first time I felt it. The quiet, suffocating realization that I wasn't family anymore. I was an expense. Still, I stayed silent. Pride, habit, fear. Who knows? But I kept fixing things around the house. Changed the filters, repaired the fence, mowed the lawn. I thought maybe they'd remember I wasn't useless. Instead, one evening last winter, Jake brought his friends home drunk. I was in the kitchen making tea. One of them grabbed my cap from the counter and laughed. "Yo, is this the gardener's hat?" Jake grinned. "Nah, that's Grandpa's. He thinks he still works here." They all laughed, and I laughed too, just to keep my dignity. But the kettle moment came a week later. Lila had borrowed my car without asking. I'd told her gently that next time she should at least leave a note. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "It's not even your car, Grandpa." Dad pays for everything. I reminded her that the car was mine, bought long before she was born. That's when Jake appeared, holding his phone, smirking. "Chill, old man. Don't yell at my sister." I wasn't yelling. I was just standing there, holding my cup. And then Lila reached for the kettle. "Let's see how calm Grandpa stays when it's hot," she joked. She tilted it just enough for a stream to splash on my wrist. I gasped. The pain burned deep and immediate. Jake laughed, recording the whole thing. "Oh man, this is gold," he said. Grandpa Rage Challenge. The video never went online. I made sure of that later. But the sound of their laughter stayed. Mark called it an accident. Dad, they're just kids. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I still had the blister under the bandage. You don't understand how the world works now, Diane added. Everything's for content. Don't take it so personally. But I did. I took it personally enough to start paying attention again, like the old mechanic in me woke up, ready to inspect the leaks. I started noticing the deliveries, luxury sneakers, new phones, streaming gear, all paid from my managed funds. I noticed my name missing from the utility bills. I noticed the way Mark avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions. And then, one night, when they thought I was asleep, I heard Diane whisper, "Once the inheritance clears, he can move to assisted living, maybe by summer." That's when I realized something. They'd already buried me. I was just a ghost still walking around their house, paying their bills. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window watching the streetlights shimmer across the wet driveway. In 73 years, I'd lost a wife, a home, friends, but never my dignity. And if they wanted to treat me like a relic, they'd soon learn how dangerous old relics can be. I didn't scream or pack my bags. I did what I've always done. I made a plan, step by step, quiet, methodical, precise. The way you fix an engine, piece by piece until it runs exactly how you want. Because my name might have been fading from their bills, but it was still on one thing they didn't know about, the title of the land my house had stood on. And buried in that old contract, under the signatures they never bothered to read, was a clause that would make their perfect suburban life collapse overnight. They'd taken everything from me, respect, money, pride. Now it was my turn to take something back, and this time they'd never see it coming. It started with a piece of paper, thin, yellowed, folded so many times the edges had turned soft. I'd kept it tucked inside an old toolbox Helen had given me on our 10th anniversary, the one she'd engraved with a single word, always. Inside that box was every important thing I'd ever owned, spare screws, wedding ring, service medals, and the deed to my old property. I hadn't looked at it in years, not since I trusted Mark to handle things. That night, after hearing them talk about shipping me off to assisted living, I pulled it out and read it line by line. There it was, in black ink, dated 1992. My name listed as sole owner of the land parcel at 41 Maple Hollow Road. When I sold the house, I'd transferred ownership of the structure, not the land. The buyer, Mark's lawyer friend, who helped with the transaction, had never filed the land deed, meaning the soil, the foundation beneath their perfect suburban mansion, was still legally mine. I laughed quietly in the dark. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was Helen looking out for me. But for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since the day they moved me in. Power. Small, quiet, almost invisible, but mine. The next morning, I made coffee before anyone else woke up. I poured it into my favorite chipped mug, the one with the faded words, "Best Grandpa Ever." I ran my thumb over the letters while I planned. I'd need proof, documents, copies, things that couldn't just disappear when Mark decided to clean out my stuff. I found my old briefcase, polished the dust off, and began collecting everything. Tax receipts, letters from the city, even Helen's will. By noon, Diane appeared in her yoga outfit, phone in hand. "Dad, could you keep the TV down? I'm live streaming in the living room." I nodded, pretending to be the same quiet, obedient old man she thought I was. She didn't notice the envelope sticking out of my jacket. That envelope held the key to my revenge. After lunch, I asked Mark if I could borrow his car for errands. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Gas it up, will you?" he muttered. That was fine. I wasn't coming back with it. I drove straight to the county records office downtown, the same building where I'd once waited for hours to renew my mechanic's license. Now, I was an old man moving slower, invisible to everyone but the security guard, who nodded politely as I shuffled in. Inside, a woman in her 40s looked up from her computer. "Can I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said, setting the envelope on the counter. "I need to confirm ownership of a land parcel at 41 Maple Hollow Road. It's urgent." She typed, frowned, and then her eyebrows shot up. "Well, that's interesting. The property record shows the house sold 3 years ago, but the underlying land deed hasn't been transferred. It's still in your name, Mr. "Tom Carter," I said. The name felt heavy in my mouth, like remembering who I used to be. She smiled politely. Congratulations, Mr. Carter. Looks like you own a very valuable piece of dirt. I thanked her, requested certified copies of every document, and paid cash for them. On my way out, I passed a young man arguing on the phone about a mortgage. I remembered Mark's words. Dad, you don't understand how the world works now. Maybe I didn't understand his world, the world of credit cards and influencers and fake smiles. But I knew how paper worked. Signatures, ink, proof. Those things don't lie. I stopped at a diner afterward, ordered black coffee and a slice of pie, and watched the afternoon sunlight hit the window. I'd spent my whole life fixing broken things for other people. Now, I was going to fix my own life. When I got back that evening, the house smelled like garlic and wine. Diane was cooking dinner for some guests. Mark was in his home office on a video call, voice sharp and confident, the tone of a man who thought he controlled everything. I went upstairs to my small room, more a storage space than a bedroom, and hid the documents under the loose floorboard beneath my bed. At dinner, Diane poured wine for everyone except me. Doctor says you shouldn't drink, right? She said sweetly. I smiled. Doctor also says stress kills faster than alcohol, so maybe pour me half a glass. She hesitated, then laughed awkwardly and moved on. Jake was talking about his new YouTube channel. Grandpa, you should follow me. I'm doing pranks and lifestyle stuff. Maybe we'll get you on camera sometime, huh? Lila snorted. Yeah, Grandpa tries TikTok challenge, gone wrong edition. They both laughed. Mark chuckled too. They're just teasing, Dad. Don't take it seriously. I didn't. Not anymore. I just watched them all, the family I'd built and fed and paid for, sitting in my light, eating on plates I'd bought, mocking me like a bad joke. And as I watched, the plan wrote itself in my head, line by line. First, I'd need help, legal help, someone who didn't owe Mark favors. I remembered an old friend, Patrick O'Neill, who used to work construction with me back in the 70s. He'd gone to night school, became a real estate attorney. We hadn't talked in years, but last I heard, he still had his practice downtown. The next morning I called him. Patrick, it's Tom Carter. You remember the guy who nearly lost a finger fixing your Chevy in '89? A pause, then a burst of laughter. Jesus, Tom, I thought you were dead. Not yet, I said, but my family seems to be working on it. He laughed again, then his tone softened. What's going on, old friend? I need to make sure something I own stays mine, and maybe I need to make it someone else's problem soon. 2 days later, we met at his office, smaller than I expected, but clean and honest. Patrick listened while I explained everything. The sale, the deed, the treatment, the accident with the kettle. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back and whistled. Tom, this is straight-up exploitation. You could sue them. I don't want court drama, I said. I want peace. I just want to live the rest of my days without being treated like garbage. Patrick nodded slowly. You're the legal owner of the land, no question, which means that house they're living in, every nail, every tile, technically sits on your property. I figured as much. If you wanted, he said carefully, you could terminate their occupancy, sell the land out from under them. The buyer could make them move. I smiled for the first time in weeks. That's exactly what I want. Patrick raised an eyebrow. You sure? That'll burn bridges. I chuckled. The bridge already burned, Pat. I'm just controlling where the ashes land. We started paperwork that day. Patrick drew up a notice of intent to sell, drafted letters for the city, arranged for a discreet appraisal. The number came back at $920,000, nearly double what I'd sold the house for. Enough to start a new life somewhere quiet, maybe a small cabin near the lake Helen loved. When I left his office, he patted my shoulder. You know, Tom, sometimes justice comes with a price tag, but I'd say they've already overcharged you. That night, back home, Jake was live streaming in the kitchen again, showing off their new appliances. Yeah, my parents upgraded, induction cooktop, smart fridge, whole package. He turned the camera toward me. Say hi to my followers, Grandpa. I looked straight into the lens, smiled faintly, and said, Enjoy this house while you can, son. It's not going to be here forever. He laughed. His viewers spammed the chat with laughing emojis. But I meant every word, because by that point, the sale was already in motion. And the buyers? They weren't strangers. They were a family that knew exactly how it felt to be humiliated. A young couple who'd been denied a home because Mark's company outbid them last year. Patrick tracked them down, and when he told them the story, they didn't hesitate. "We'll pay cash," they said. By the end of the week, I had a signed offer. In less than 30 days, the land, and the house sitting on it, would belong to someone else. They had no idea what was coming, but they would, very soon. You'd think I'd feel guilty. Selling the ground out from under my own family? Even saying it sounds cruel. But guilt is for people who still owe something to those they hurt. My son and his brood had collected their debt long ago. Every sleepless night, every bruise from that accident, every dollar I'd worked to give them, that was my payment in full. What I felt now wasn't guilt. It was clarity. The morning after signing the offer, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee while the others rushed around for school and work. Lila complained she couldn't find her sneakers. Jake shouted about his Wi-Fi being slow. Mark barked orders. Diane checked her reflection in every mirror she passed. I watched them with a strange calm, as if I were already gone, and this was just the echo of a life I'd once lived. Diane looked at me finally. "Dad, you didn't take your vitamins again, did you? You look pale." I smiled. "Don't worry, Diane. I've been taking everything I need." She didn't notice the thick envelope inside my flannel pocket. The new deed documents Patrick had couriered over that morning. My name was printed on top in bold, Thomas Carter, sole proprietor. They left in a hurry, like always. The silence afterward felt heavy, but peaceful. I poured another cup of coffee and turned on the radio, one of those old stations that still played 70s hits. For a moment, I almost forgot the bitterness, just the music, the warmth, the soft hum of morning. But then I saw the burn scar on my wrist, pink and ridged like an unwanted tattoo, and the peace shattered. That afternoon, I went to meet the buyers. Their names were Anna and Miguel Ramirez, mid-30s, hard-working folks with 2 little girls. Miguel wore a paint-stained sweatshirt. Anna's hands were rough from cleaning work. They reminded me of Helen and me, before everything got complicated. Miguel shook my hand, his grip firm. "Mr. Carter, we can't believe this is happening. You're sure this is okay? The house. They live there, right?" "They do," I said, "but not for long." Anna hesitated. "Won't it cause trouble?" "Oh, it'll cause a storm," I said softly. "But sometimes a storm clears the air." Patrick handled the logistics. I wanted everything done cleanly, no loopholes. The Ramirez's paid the deposit in cash that afternoon. Escrow would close in 3 weeks. Once it did, the eviction notice would arrive, official, unarguable, final. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind rattle the window. It was strange. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Maybe it never had since the day I let Mark sign those papers. I thought about Helen. What would she say if she saw me now? She'd probably scold me for being stubborn, then kiss my cheek and whisper, "Good for you, Tom." About time they learned. 3 days passed before anyone suspected something. Mark found a letter from the county in the mail, addressed to property owner, 41 Maple Hollow Road. He frowned. "Dad, why are we still getting your name on these?" I shrugged. "Beats me, son. Bureaucracy, I guess." He didn't believe me, but he didn't push it. Not yet. Meanwhile, Jake posted a new video bragging about their family mansion and future backyard remodel. He filmed himself by the pool, calling it My Kingdom. I watched it later from my phone, shaking my head. Kids these days build empires on lies, digital castles with no foundation. That weekend, I took a slow walk through the neighborhood. Everyone waved politely, assuming I was just another old man killing time. If only they knew. The Ramirez's were scheduled to visit again for measurements. They arrived while Mark and Diane were out shopping. I let them in quietly, showed them around the property line, pointed out where the fence divided the lots. Lila spotted us through her window and came storming out, phone in hand. "What are you doing with strangers in our yard?" "Showing them the place," I said calmly. She scowled. "Are you losing it?" "Grandpa, you can't just bring random people here." Anna looked uncomfortable. "We'll come back another time," she whispered, but I stopped her. "No need to rush, dear. My family's just surprised to see new owners, that's all. Lila's jaw dropped. New owners? I smiled. Didn't your father tell you? The property's been sold. She blinked. You're joking. I handed her the certified copy of the deed. No joke, sweetheart. In 3 weeks, this land, and everything built on it, belongs to them. She stared at the paper like it was written in another language. Dad's gonna freak out. I imagine he will, I said. You might want to record that reaction for your channel. She ran inside yelling. I could hear her voice echoing through the hall. Mom, Grandpa's selling the house. Mark's car screeched into the driveway 20 minutes later. He burst through the door, red-faced. What the hell is this, Dad? Lila says you're pulling some kind of stunt. I held up the paperwork. No stunt, legal sale, closing in 3 weeks. You can't sell this house. We live here. You live on my land, I corrected him quietly. Diane appeared behind him, pale. Tom, please. This has to be a mistake. The deed was transferred years ago. Only the structure, I said. Not the soil. You built your palace on my ground. Mark's jaw clenched. We can fight this? You're confused? The lawyer? Patrick O'Neill handled it, I said, watching the realization sink in. You remember Patrick, the guy you fired from your company last year? Turns out he's very good at reading contracts. For a full minute, nobody spoke. Only the ticking clock filled the room. Finally, Mark slammed his hand on the table. You'd really do this to your own family? I looked him dead in the eye. You stopped being my family the day you called me a burden. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Diane tried to reason. Dad, think about the kids. You can't just throw them out. I thought about the kids when they burned my skin for likes, I said quietly. Now they can think about consequences. Lila started crying. Jake looked pale, like someone had just unplugged his world. I turned away, my voice steady. You have 21 days. Find a new place, pack your things. I'll be gone by then too. I just wanted to watch you understand what happens when you take an old man for a fool. Mark tried one last time. We can fix this, Dad. Please. Let's talk. There's nothing left to fix, I said. Only lessons left to learn. He didn't follow me when I walked out the door. None of them did. I think they finally realized I meant it. That night, I sat in the small park near the river, the same one where Helen and I used to watch fireworks every 4th of July. I could almost hear her laugh, soft and steady like the breeze. You did what you had to, Tom, she'd whisper. You protected what's left of your dignity. For the first time in years, I felt light, untethered, almost free. But freedom, like revenge, comes with echoes. And the echo was coming fast. Because the next morning, Mark didn't show up at breakfast. The kitchen was silent except for the low hum of the fridge. On the counter sat a folded note with my name on it. It read, You've made your point, Dad, but you have no idea what you've started. I read that note 3 times, tracing each letter like it might reveal a hidden meaning. You have no idea what you've started. It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. It was pride disguised as warning. The kind of arrogance Mark inherited from me, but sharpened into something colder. I'd taught him to fight for what's his. I just never imagined he had used that lesson against me. When he finally came home that night, his expression was composed, businesslike. He wore the same face I used to wear to meetings when I was angry, but didn't want to show it. Dad, we need to talk, he said, privately. We sat across from each other in the den, the faint smell of Diane's perfume hanging in the air. He placed a folder on the table between us. You think you're clever, selling the land out from under us? Well, I've spoken to my legal team. They're confident we can fight this. Your legal team? I asked. Or your conscience? He ignored that. Even if your paperwork holds, no one will buy property that's about to become a family scandal. Do you really want this all over the news? Elderly father evicts son and grandchildren? That's how it'll read. I leaned back in my chair. Maybe they'll read the part where the son stole his father's life savings, or where the grandchildren nearly burned him. His eyes flashed. That was an accident. Keep telling yourself that, son. Maybe you'll believe it one day. He rubbed his temples. Dad, why are you doing this? I gave you a home. You took mine first. That shut him up. Silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Then he sighed and softened his tone. Look, maybe we went too far. But this is extreme. Let's just undo the sale, and we'll work something out. I'm not undoing anything, I said quietly. You've had every chance to treat me like family. Now, I'm just a man reclaiming his property. He stood abruptly, his composure cracking. Then don't expect forgiveness when this blows up in your face. He grabbed his folder and left. The front door slammed so hard the picture frames rattled. That night, I called Patrick. He's fighting it, I said. Patrick chuckled. Let him try. You've got every document clean and notarized. They don't stand a chance. But something about Mark's tone unsettled me. He wasn't just angry, he was plotting. 2 days later, I found out what he meant. I was in the backyard feeding the birds when a black SUV pulled up. 2 men in suits got out, the kind that smell like expensive cologne and quiet threats. One of them smiled politely. Mr. Carter, we're from the county zoning department. We received an anonymous complaint about unauthorized property transfer. We just need to ask a few questions. I could feel the heat crawl up my neck. Mark had filed a report, trying to stall the sale, maybe ruin it. But Patrick had prepared me. I handed them the certified documents, the official land registry copies. They scanned them, looked disappointed, and left within 10 minutes. I watched the SUV disappear down the street, and I smiled. Round one to the old man. But Mark wasn't done. That evening, Diane came to my room with a tray of soup, the same fake kindness she used when she wanted something. Dad, I know you and Mark are butting heads, but the kids are devastated. Lila's been crying all day. Then maybe she's finally learning emotion, I said. Please, Diane whispered, placing her hand on my arm. If you love them, don't take their home. I stared at her. If they'd loved me, they wouldn't have taken mine. Her hand fell away. You've changed, Tom. No, I said. I've remembered who I was before you all made me forget. She left without another word. Later, I heard her on the phone in the hallway. Yes, he's serious. No, he won't budge. Maybe we should tell them to speed it up. I didn't know who them was, but I'd soon find out. The next morning, a noise woke me. Voices outside, engines, movement. I went to the window and saw 3 moving trucks in the driveway. Workers were carrying out furniture, loading boxes, my tools, my armchair, my memories. What the hell are you doing? I shouted as I stepped outside. One of the movers looked startled. Ma'am, sir, Mrs. Carter said this stuff's going to storage. Mrs. Carter, I repeated, my voice shaking. You mean Diane? He nodded, glancing nervously toward the porch where she stood with crossed arms. Dad, you said you wanted more space. I'm decluttering for you. Everything will be safe. I felt something cold crawl through my chest. They weren't just angry. They were erasing me. Put it all back, I said. Dad, I said put it back! My voice cracked like thunder, startling even me. The workers froze. Diane tried to smile like I was overreacting. Dad, please, you're making a scene. That's when I picked up one of the boxes and tore it open. Inside were my photo albums, Helen's wedding ring, the brass wrench from my first job, all tossed together like junk. I held up the wrench. You see this? This built your house, Diane. Every screw, every pipe, every dollar. And you throw it away because it doesn't match your decor? Her face turned red. You need help, Tom. This anger isn't healthy. I dropped the wrench at her feet. You'll see anger when the sheriff delivers your eviction notice. I turned and walked back inside, slamming the door. That night, I packed what little I had left. My documents, some clothes, a few photographs. I couldn't sleep, so I sat by the window, staring at the dark outline of the house. Soon, it would be someone else's problem. Soon the laughter, the arguments, the poison in these walls would belong to strangers. But, deep down, a thought gnawed at me. Was I really any better than them now? The answer came the next morning when Anna called. Mr. Carter, we just wanted to say thank you again. We're so excited. Our girls can't stop talking about their new home. Her voice was bright, hopeful, the kind of tone people use when life is about to change for the better. And that's when I realized maybe this wasn't revenge after all. Maybe it was redemption, giving something good to someone who deserved it. I spent that day fixing up small things around the yard, not for Mark, not for Diane, but for the Ramirezes. Tightened the gate, repainted the mailbox, even planted new flowers along the walkway. It was my goodbye, my final act of care. That evening, Mark came home early. He didn't yell this time. He just stood there, watching me paint. "You're really going through with it," he said quietly. "I am." He looked around the yard, at the house he thought he'd built. "You know this'll ruin us, right? The mortgage, the loans, everything's tied to this place." I nodded. "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, defeated. "I don't even hate you, Dad. I just don't understand you." "You don't have to," I said. "You just have to remember me." He left without another word. 3 weeks later, the sale closed. The sheriff's office delivered the notice. I wasn't there when it happened, but Patrick told me the look on Mark's face was something between disbelief and heartbreak. They had 30 days to vacate. I rented a small cabin near Lake Cedar. 1 room, wood stove, silence. When I moved in, the air smelled like pine and freedom. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Then, one morning, I got a letter. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single photo. Jake and Lila standing in front of a motel, their smiles forced, their eyes tired. On the back, in shaky ink, Mark had written, "We lost everything. Are you proud now?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I placed it beside Helen's picture on the windowsill and whispered, "No, son, I'm not proud, but I am finally free." Outside, the sun rose over the lake, bright and unforgiving. Like truth itself, freedom, I learned, is quieter than you think. It doesn't come with trumpets or fireworks. It comes with the sound of morning birds and the creak of a wooden chair that no one else wants to sit in. It comes when you realize no one is yelling your name from downstairs. No one's filming you without permission. And no one's waiting for you to die so they can spend what's left. 3 weeks in that cabin felt like learning to breathe again. I cooked what I wanted, slept when I pleased, talked to Helen every night as if she were still beside me. Sometimes I caught myself humming while I worked, an old mechanic's habit, and it almost startled me. Joy had become such a foreign sound. Patrick dropped by once a week, usually bringing groceries and updates. "They're gone," he said one morning in early spring. "Mark and his family moved out last weekend. The Ramirezes are settling in." I nodded slowly. "Good. They'll treat it better than we ever did." Patrick hesitated. "Tom, your son tried to see you." I kept my gaze on the mug in my hands. "And he left after you didn't answer the door." I didn't tell him I'd been sitting by the window, watching from behind the curtain, too afraid to open it. Mark had stood outside for 10 full minutes, his face thinner, older, a man who'd finally met consequence. I'd wanted to go out, to tell him I still loved him despite everything. But love, I realized, doesn't always mean forgiveness. Sometimes it just means stepping aside so the other person can face what they've earned. After Patrick left, I walked down to the lake. The water was still, glassy, reflecting the trees like a memory you're not sure is real. I threw a pebble and watched the ripples spread, thinking about how every action, every small cruelty, every kindness eventually circles back. That night, I sat at the table writing in Helen's old journal, something I hadn't touched since her funeral. The pen felt clumsy in my hand. March 11th, I wrote. "The kids are gone. I did what I had to. I don't know if justice and loneliness are supposed to feel so much alike." When I closed the book, there was a knock at the door. No one ever knocked out here. I opened it cautiously. A teenage boy stood there, maybe 16. He was wearing a sweatshirt too thin for the cold, a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Are you Mr. Carter?" he asked. "I am." He smiled nervously. "My name's Tyler. My parents bought your old place. Anna and Miguel Ramirez." I relaxed a little. "Ah, so you're the oldest. How's the house treating you?" He grinned. "It's great, sir. My mom says it feels like home already. But she wanted me to give you this." He held out a small wooden box. "She said it was in the shed. Thought it might belong to you." I opened it slowly. Inside was Helen's locket, the one she wore every day for 40 years. I must have left it behind during the move. My throat tightened. "Thank you, son." He hesitated. "She also said, We're sorry for what you went through. With your family, I mean. My parents said you did something brave. I looked at him. This kid who still believed in simple words like brave. Brave's just another word for too tired to be afraid, I said quietly. He nodded like he understood more than I expected. My dad says we're going to fix up the garden you planted, the one with the lilacs. For a second, I couldn't speak. That was my wife's favorite flower. Then we'll take care of them, he said simply and left. When the door closed, I sat down and held the locket. Inside was a tiny picture of Helen at 23, smiling like she knew the secret to life and wasn't telling. I whispered, "You see that, sweetheart? Someone's taking care of your garden again." That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I decided to visit town for the first time. My old pickup coughed but started, faithful as ever. The main street looked smaller, newer somehow. There was a cafe where the old hardware store used to be. I walked in, ordered black coffee, and sat near the window. Halfway through my cup, I saw them, Mark and Diane, sitting across the street at a bus stop, luggage beside them. They looked like travelers without a map, the kind of people who used to give orders now waiting for a ride. Diane spotted me first. She nudged Mark, and his eyes followed hers. Our gazes met through the glass. For a moment, the noise of the cafe vanished. Just me and my son, two stubborn men who'd built the same walls around our hearts. He stood, started walking toward the door. I should have looked away, but I couldn't. He came inside, hat in hand, no arrogance left. "Dad," his voice cracked on that single word. "Mark." He sat down without asking, like the world had finally taught him manners. We didn't know where else to go. The business folded after the foreclosure, Diane staying with her sister until we figure things out. I sipped my coffee. "You'll figure it out. You always do." He nodded slowly. "I came to say, I get it now. All of it. I should have listened before things got this bad." I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to add. He looked down at his hands. "The kids won't talk to me. Lila blames me for everything. Jake dropped out of college." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said softly and meant it. He looked up then, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, humility. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you. I understand now why you did it, and I don't hate you for it." I felt something loosen in my chest. "That's good, son, because hating me won't help you rebuild." He gave a small, sad smile. "I don't have much left to rebuild." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, the one I'd written the night before, just in case he ever came. I slid it across the table. "There's something in there that might help." He frowned. "Dad, I don't want your money." "It's not money," I said. "It's a contact. A man in town who needs a good project manager, construction work, pays fair, no suits, no meetings. Just real labor." He stared at it for a moment, then took it. "You still trying to fix things, huh?" "Old habits die hard," I said. He laughed once softly, and for a flicker of a second, I saw the boy who used to sit on my lap while I told him stories about engines and perseverance. When he stood to leave, he hesitated. "You ever think about coming back, being part of things again?" I looked out the window toward the hills. "Maybe one day, when you build something worth coming back to." He nodded, eyes glistening, and left without another word. I sat there a long time after he was gone. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of lilacs. Or maybe it was just memory playing tricks on me. Either way, I smiled, because for the first time, the pain didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt like the price of truth, and I'd paid it in full. It's strange how silence can sound like healing. Out here, the world moves slowly. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the hum of wind through pine and the whisper of water against the dock. Some mornings I sit outside before sunrise, watch the mist drift across the lake, and think about how long it took me to find peace again. How many years I wasted trying to earn love that was never freely given. Mark writes sometimes. Simple letters, neat handwriting, no excuses, no apologies, just updates. Got the new job. Taking classes at night, or Jake's working with me now. We're trying to fix things between us, small words but honest ones. I keep them all in a box beside Helen's locket. The Ramirez's send postcards too. pictures of the garden blooming. Your lilacs are thriving, Anna writes every spring. We planted new ones for your wife. Thought you'd like to know. I like to imagine Helen somewhere above, laughing softly, saying, "See, Tom, life goes on, it always does. Sometimes I still drive by the old neighborhood, not to spy, just to remember. The house looks different now. The porch has fresh paint, the roof gleams, children's toys scatter across the lawn. Laughter rings from the backyard, a sound I'd almost forgotten belonged in that place. I park across the street for a minute, smile, and leave before anyone notices. That house isn't mine anymore, but it's alive again. That's enough." Last week, I ran into Mark at the hardware store. He looked older, tired in the way men do when they finally realize the world doesn't bend for them. But there was something new in his eyes, humility maybe, or gratitude. He saw me before I could slip away. "Dad," he said, almost like a prayer. "Mark." He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I heard the Ramirez's invited you to dinner next month. They asked if I wanted to come too. You okay with that?" I thought about it. About the years between us, all the words left unsaid, all the love turned sideways. Then I nodded. "If you come as yourself, not the man who wanted to own everything, just my son." He exhaled, relief softening his face. "I can do that." When he walked away, I realized my hands weren't shaking for once. That night, I sat by the fire with Helen's journal open on my lap. It was half empty, pages still waiting. So I wrote, not to record pain this time, but to close the circle. April the 2nd. The boy came back a man. Maybe that's the real inheritance, not money or houses, but lessons learned too late. I've lost much, but not everything. The garden still blooms, the lake still glows. I still breathe, and sometimes when the wind moves just right, I swear I hear your laugh again. I stopped writing and listened. The cabin creaked as if answering me. Outside, a loon called across the water, long, mournful, and beautiful. Later, near dusk, I took a walk to the dock. The sky was the color of burnished copper, the kind Helen used to paint in her old notebooks. I sat at the edge, the wood cool under my palms, and thought about everything that had happened. People always think revenge feels like triumph. It doesn't. It feels like finally dropping a heavy load you've been carrying too long. It leaves you sore, but lighter, exhausted, but unshackled. I didn't ruin their lives. I only removed myself from the part of it that was rotting, and somehow, that was enough to make the rest of us grow again. When I got back to the cabin, the answering machine light blinked. I pressed play. Mark's voice filled the room, soft and uncertain. "Hey, Dad. Just wanted to let you know. Jake got accepted into trade school. He's studying automotive repair. Said he wanted to fix things like Grandpa used to. Thought you'd like that. Dinner's still on for Sunday. Lila's coming too. She wants to apologize." There was a pause, a breath. "And, thanks for teaching me the hard way. I think I finally understand what you were trying to say." Click. End a message. I stood there for a long moment, the cabin quiet except for the clock ticking. Then I laughed, not loud, but deep. The kind that comes from somewhere behind the ribs. "About time, son," I whispered. Sunday came warm and bright. I shaved, put on my old flannel, and drove down to Maple Hollow Road. The moment I turned the corner, I saw them all in the yard. Mark grilling, Diane setting plates, Jake and Lila helping the Ramirez girls pick flowers. The lilacs were in full bloom, purple and fragrant, swaying gently in the breeze. When they saw me, everything went still. Then Lila ran first, tears streaking her face. "Grandpa," she cried, throwing her arms around me. Jake followed, awkward but sincere. Mark stood back, watching, his eyes shining. "Welcome home, Dad," he said quietly. I looked around, at the garden, at the children, at the sunlight spilling over the roof that used to be mine, and I realized home wasn't a place anymore. It was this moment, the forgiveness in it, the laughter returning to it. We ate together, talked about nothing and everything. At one point, Mark raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I raised mine too. And to old lessons finally learned. The Ramirezes smiled. The kids cheered. For a moment, it felt like Helen was there among us, her hand warm on my shoulder, whispering, See, you didn't lose them. You just had to remind them who you were. That night, when I drove back to the cabin, the road shimmered with the last light of day. I stopped by the lake once more, the air thick with the scent of lilacs. I looked up at the sky, at the first stars appearing, and said softly, "You were right, sweetheart. Love isn't about keeping people close. It's about letting them find their way back." The water rippled as if nodding. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt whole again. The end. If you like the story, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and write in the comments if something like this has ever happened in your life. I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you for watching.